Hello to everyone who joined us today. It's nice to see you. A quick introduction to the event and to us. In October 2019, we began the Bombay chapter of Letters to Strangers. Mental health advocacy is a subject very close to our hearts for a variety of reasons, and sometimes all we needed was someone to listen to us or maybe phone. At L2S Plus Bombay, we recognize the importance of art as therapy. We look at Gypsy's words, poetry can change your heart.
वैष्णवी विश्व
Each communication with us from a poem that touched our hearts. Our small endeavor has allowed over 500 people to share their stories and feel heard.
As the quote puts it, Mumbai is the city and Bombay is the emotion. Bombay brings with it benevolence, warmth, and a nurturing attitude. We're a safe space for one to unravel their thoughts and emotions from the deepest layers of their mind and soul without any doubt of being received with nothing but love, empathy, and a listening ear. The constantly growing ambition to improve and fulfill our dreams is what Bombay stands for, as do we at Letters to Strangers Bombay.
We held our first event in January 2020, and the day's memories still fill my heart with warmth. We aim at hosting an event every quarter. Given the circumstances, we are compelled to hold an online event. We want this event to be a celebration of everything that has gotten us through the lockdown: poetry, music, books, therapy, stand up comedy, and countless YouTube videos.
We've done a lot of things since we began, be it releasing mixtapes, tying up with poetry houses, undertaking lots of letter exchanges, and so much more that we have in store for you. We are not usually the most creative people either, as you can see from the naming of our event. But this event is special, and all of you are special to us for choosing to be a part of this. Thank you for coming.
Our first performance for today is a musical one. Only 17 years old, Anika is a singer songwriter from Mumbai. Her music is known to be soothing, and she is an absolute sucker for the acoustic guitar. You may have caught her recently released singles See Through on Hangama and her other works Heartbeat and Call Me Tonight on other streaming platforms. Please give Anika Bharwani a huge round of virtual applause.
Hi Vaishnavi, hi Arushi. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited. So I'm just gonna get right into it. The first song I'm gonna be singing is a song I wrote a while back. It's called Hot Air Balloon. And it's very Khabu ke Parinde types, and it's like you're drinking a warm cup of coffee. And it reminds you, it gives you perspective of how important the small things are in life. So this is Hot Air Balloon. I'm flying on hot air balloon. I've never seen sky so blue. But when I'm up so up in the clouds, why do I still want to come down? Could it be 'cause I'm in love with you, or I just miss the ocean blue water? Could it be the taste of coffee, or having 8 hours to sleep? Could it be 'cause I wanna run away, hide and seek? Or maybe, just maybe, I sleep. I'm flying on hot air balloon. If I reach out, I can touch the moon. I feel like I can fly, like I can fly, but I want to come home, come home tonight. Could it be 'cause I wanna buy you flowers in June, or just every other month? Could it be my love for poetry, or traveling for a couple of weeks? Could it be 'cause I wanna write a letter from me to me? Or maybe just maybe I too many. That was hot air balloon. Why can I only see myself? Wait. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Great. Guys, if y'all can, just like come on camera so I can see some of your faces, because it's like I'm just like recording. I mean, singing to myself. So if I see some familiar faces, that'd be great. So the next song is, I'm actually going to sing all originals today for the first time. This one is called First Rain of June, and surprisingly, I actually wrote it on the 1st of June. That was when it started raining in Bombay, and I was like, I have to write a poem. I have to write a poem. I have to write a song. I just saw Raghavia. Hi, and it's about just the rainy vibes and what I love the rain. So yeah, and if it's raining now, then perfect. It's the first week of June, so I check my phone for you. Is it too soon? We were gonna run away till I know where you are. You said when the clouds cried our name, we would be okay. But now I'm envious of the rain, 'cause it touches your skin. And I just wanna drink hot chocolate and sleep in a tonight, watching what I miss to call it history. But when we met, I just wanna hold you close to me, sing to the beat, black and white, our starry night on the first rain of June. Straight up I said those 3 words, if you wanted to say it, but you might win. We're only 17, we have our lives ahead of us. We don't know love. You said what we had was real, so stay true to your word. 'Cause now it's like I'm invisible to you. And I just wanna drink hot chocolate and sleep on the today. Watching other mysteries, we call it mysteries. But when we met, I just wanna hold you close to me, sing to the dream, black and white across starry days on the first rain of June. Oh, 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 I can see. Oh, oh. that was first rain of June. Yeah, so I think I have time for one more song. Which one should I say? Okay, so this one's called Behind the Sky. It's another song I wrote. Um, I have this whole theory where like behind the sky, it's kind of cringy, but just bear with me. Where behind the sky, we have everything we've ever wanted, whether it's our dreams, our dream person. And this song is specifically about the dream person. Maybe like in this world, she or he is not sufficient enough. That makes sense, and is not giving you enough. So you wanna catch a plane, go behind the sky, and hopefully find that world. Um, yeah. If behind the sky there's another world with another girl who's not afraid to show the love she holds while we grow old. But will she brush my teeth for me after I'm drunk and giddy? Or will she stand to the side and just sleep through the night? Will she put her hand in mine and dance with me all the time? Or will I be left alone with the unknown? So just give me a plane, take me away to outer space, to another day. Because all that matters, all that matters is you. Oh, because all that matters is you. You, you, what if behind the sky there's a secret on how to fix things, on how to make a one-way street into two ways, no distance, not a hate. It was my birthday last week, so you left a kiss on my cheek, and then you ran away. You were here to stay. I know you know my favorite song. I thought you sing it all day long, but you were so far. I was just me and my guitar. So just give me a plane, take me away to outer space, to another day. Because all that matters is you. Oh, because all that matters is you. That was Behind the Sky. Yep, I think my time is up. Yeah, it's 2:30. Okay. Thank you so much for having me on. This was so much fun. And I can't wait to see all the other performers. Bye.
Thank you so much, Anika. Your performance was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Um, Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining today. We're going to be waiting till 2:37, so 4 minutes from now, for Redbrook Woods to join in, and then I'll be announcing them. Thank you. The next performer is a testament to our belief of poetry having the power to change us. Redrick Words is Ashoka University's poetry club. They began as a spoken word poetry club. They began as a spoken word club, but decided to foray into anything poetry related sometime last year. They also publish the Pocketbook of Poetry as an online magazine of poetry from Ashoka students. Today, they'll be performing poetry that is political in nature. After all, the personal is political and all poetry is political. The performers include Ananya Rao, the president of Red Brick Words. She recently graduated with a degree in sociology and anthropology. She is also a member of Think Ocean, and her poetry is bound to leave you speechless. Bhavya Gupta, a member of the core team and a rising second year. She is a poet, illustrator, part time ukulele player, and has her own podcast too. Swati Singh is a rising third year student and an English major. Be prepared to be wowed.
Hello. I, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm in a slightly remote area, so you might not be able to hear me. Uh, but I'll be the first person performing from Red Brick Words today. And the poem that I am about to read is an English ghazal, and it's called You Make Love to Me with Ishq in Urdu. And yeah, here it is. You make love to me with Ishq in Urdu. Convince me that you're worth the risk in Urdu. You collect call me while I try to translate you to touch from my phone's hard disk in Urdu. You text me love poems and read Harry Potter, but cheer while I slay each basilisk in Urdu. You come by for coffee, though we're a chai couple. And though it's Dalgona, man the whisk in Urdu. If words were like concrete or bricks, I'd build you. Of literature, my love, an obelisk in Urdu. You say you'll stand by me, sans terms or conditions. Same Swati, there's no asterisk in Urdu. You make love to me with ishq in Urdu. You make it worth the risk in Urdu. Thank you.
Thank you, Swati, for that really nice poem. I'll be going next, and my poem's a little bit different. So it is based on a lot of recent counterinsurgency and insurgency protests that have been happening in Manipur, actually for the last 40 years. And it's based on a lot of news events that don't make it into mainstream media and don't really get the attention of a lot of people in our country. Yeah, so here goes. I hope you enjoy it. A dream is a series of images, ideas, emotions, sensations, usually occurring involuntarily in the mind during certain stages of sleep, necessary for mental, emotional, and physical health. It is because of this conventional, normative, standardizing definition of dreams that I have come to realize that dreams are what keep me going. I have to dream, I want to dream. You see, I want to dream because when I do, I don't see Naoba being slaughtered in his own backyard, his blood staining the grass that held his first steps, his first words, his first love. Love wrote her prayers in red across every wall in the city, but she was scratched out by the bleeding ink of bigotry. I want to dream because when I do, I don't see his parents cowering in the darkness, struggling to discern whispers from winds and footfalls from cricket calls, the polished wood of their prayer beads, which once held aspirations and appreciation, was now stained grey by the corrosive touch of dread. You see, I want to dream because when I do, I don't see Michael's broken body strewn across a slab of stone, his liver packed with gunpowder, his lungs pockmarked with bullet holes, the image of his corpse on television, stamped with the words militant killed, which is always a euphemism for cold-blooded murder. I want to dream because when I do, I don't see his wife chasing policemen, politicians, waiting endlessly for the lifeless screen of her mobile phone to light up just one more time instead. Her last glimpse of her husband was behind the 1,036,800 pixels of her television screen. You ask me why I spend all my hours with the little girl next door, speaking to her of pop songs and masala movies, teenage heartthrobs and girl gang drama, why I braid fantasies into her hair and balance fairy tales on her nose. It is so that someday, her only images of fire are not the acrid stench of burning rubber from the buses that are torched every day, or the sight of blackened bricks, that once held histories and romances, now crumbling to protests and riots and hatred and rage, or the screams of her neighbors, consumed by the blaze, as they join the never-ending list of collateral damage. So that someday, fire means diyas on Diwali, candles on a cake, groundnuts roasting on coal, campfire shadows dancing across cheeks, the touch of the boy she loves, the zeal to fight for what she believes in, passion, spirit, life. Thank you.
I think from all our side, we can say that that was a very beautiful and gut-wrenching poem. And I think I'm going next. So my poem is titled "The Diyas on My Balcony," and it's kind of my response to what was happening in the country and something just something I wanted to say. So I'll start. The diyas on my balcony are the start of a forest fire capable of third-degree burns and blisters oozing blood. The voices in my head pound over religion defined by the man with the banduk in his hand, who is sometimes senile, sometimes my age, wearing the Pathan suit that my Nana last wore when he came to India, a refugee. Sometimes that man celebrates with cheers of Jai Shri Ram that are echoed by children in classrooms clutching rosemary as they sing their morning prayer. And sometimes that man bows on a road, chanting Allah's name in reverence. The diyas on my balcony are hope that victory will come home like it did when Ram returned from war or when Prophet Muhammad completed his conquest of Mecca. The victory that we all pray for in theistic and atheistic ways, fighting in hazmat suits and dim-lit kitchens, on battlegrounds that smell of phenyl and sanitizer, or within four walls that seem to close in every day. In all, we persist, or try to. The diyas on my balcony mean nothing, if you will. Sometimes when daylight is not enough, I like to burn ghee against a spur of cotton, the melted liquid dripping against my windowsill, leaving behind ash marks. And then I light it again and again and again, till the batti has dried out and it's just the diya and me. It reminds me of us, burning every day to have our opinions voiced, declaring our right from wrong like it is black and white, no specks of gray, like the entire world will see our side of the truth, which is painted gold and stands for truth. Like the ball is not a sphere at all, like it has edges that stop all from looking at the other side. Discovering a new truth. We burn and burn till we run out of ghee and batti, and all that is left is an empty diya that resembles us. The diyas on my balcony are flickering. The diyas on my balcony are for strangers lost in the dark. The diyas on my balcony are tiny specks in the night sky. The diyas on my balcony are the 2 rupees I spent talking to the lady with the potter's wheel. The diyas on my balcony are witness to my faults. The diyas on my balcony scorch me sometimes. The diyas on my balcony are now lit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Swati, Ananya, and Bhavya. Your poems have definitely left us wowed. Thank you so much. Okay, so how have all of y'all been today? Let's talk a little till our next performance. You could ask me questions about L2S Bombay, what we do, if you wish to. Or you could just tell me about yourself, how you've been spending quarantine. Okay, I'm gonna go first. This is how I have spent the last few months. I have been working for L2S. I started working in March. So I've been doing this. I've been doing a little bit of online courses and working out and basically listening to a lot of music, poetry, stand-up comedy. And we all have been the entire team, which is what gave us this idea to like hold an event of things that got us through the lockdown. Hence, we have this event. We also collectively realized that our dream is to get the underprivileged mental health resources, which is why we have this event to raise funds and a lot of other things going on, like workshops, and all the funds raised would be going towards that. So yeah, we got like a really, really nice video out a few days back. So if you haven't checked that out, look at it. It has Easy Wanderling's song called A Dream to Keep Us Going. And our dream is to get mental health resources achieve in the reach of underprivileged students.
I spent most of my summer with puppies.
It's so cute.
I've spent most of my time, I've tried to learn all of Adobe Suite and I've been trying to design. So I've spent my summer designing and juggling internships and writing a little bit. That's all I've done.
Sounds amazing. Okay, if y'all don't mind me asking, can y'all tell me about what inspired y'all to start writing poetry or like what still inspires y'all to write poems?
I'll go first then. So so initially I started writing poetry because I used to read a lot. I still do, and because I was such an avid reader, I just felt that I could maybe write too. So I started writing, and I didn't actually start with poetry. I started with fiction. I completed a novel, and then I realized that I don't really like it all that much. So I started trying other forms of writing, and I stumbled upon poetry, and it stuck. Uh, I enjoyed doing it, and I liked when words flowed and when I wasn't using normal words, normal as in like, as in the rhyme, the rhythm, all of that just appealed to me. So I started with poetry, and of late I've discovered political poetry, wherein I can voice my opinions in a more beautiful form in like through art. So that's, for me, that is more fun and also a better way to do it, because um, any kind of opinion voiced online these days is usually when people are fighting or bickering about like their ideologies or what's happening around the country. And with art you can't really hate anyone or bicker. It's just, it's art, so you have to take it, and if you don't like it then you move on. So that's a better way to maybe emote and express myself. So that's why that keeps me going. I keep writing political pieces these days because it just feels right.
Yeah, poetry is definitely one of the best ways I feel a person can express themselves without causing harm to anyone else.
Yeah, I think if I was to talk about how I started writing it, I don't really have any big story. It's something that I've always been doing from much further back than I can even remember. So it's just something I do for fun, something I do to pass the time, but also um, with respect to political poetry in specific, it's just something that I do when I'm trying to make sense of the barrage of news that doesn't always get noticed, or that people don't know how to react to, or a lot of times when people don't know what is happening even, I feel like poetry is sometimes a different way of approaching the same news articles that keep getting regurgitated in the press. So yeah.
Yes, definitely it is.
I started writing because Vikram Seth wrote this book called Beastly Tales from Here and There, and it was so fun, and it was about animals. And then I was like, oh, you can use rhyming words, and that's cool. And I've always wanted to write a poem that would be like funny and also like political or uh, have nice rhyme, but I haven't been able to yet. So I'm almost on the verge of like procrastinating it forever until like I give up. Maybe I suspect
I
that's something that
personally
I
really
do.
liked your poem. So,
Thank you.
okay. Anything else you'll want to tell me about poetry? Because I'm all yours for it. I find it really, really interesting. I have a friend, Arushi, the founder of L2S, who writes poetry, and I could like listen to her talk about it for really long. So if you'll have anything more that you'll want to tell me, please do.
I think a lot of the time that someone writes poetry, it helps them give words to a lot of emotions that they probably didn't know they were housing, and it gives a lot of clarity to people, both the reader as well as the person who's writing. And I personally feel like that's the biggest like achievement, so to say, that you can have as a writer, that of your words help give words to someone else. I think that's one of the most important things you could do. And yeah.
I agree. Completely agree. Do you all write anything else, Bhavya, Swati, and Ananya, besides poetry?
I
Yes.
illustrate.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Um, I illustrate and draw sometimes.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
same. Same.
To
I design. I do a little bit of designing and comics. So yeah, I do that when I'm not writing poetry. I've tried fiction, but I just didn't. It didn't work for me. Even though I managed to complete a book, but I just didn't feel it, so I left it. So yeah, I just illustrate and I write poetry now.
Yeah, I think mine is similar to Bhavya. I also do some art, and I try fiction, but I think I enjoy reading it more than writing it. But
Mhm.
it is fun to try sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
I think designing is amazing. And when you get to like it may be a little frustrating in the process, but when you see the end product, it is so, so satisfying. But I only say this with very little experience of using Canva to design proposals. So there's not much. But yeah, I think it's really nice. Anyway, thank you so much, Swati, Bhavya, and Ananya. You all were amazing. Thank you so much for this talk. I feel like I've learned a lot more, and I feel like I'm definitely going to try more designing because all of y'all say it's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Bye bye. Okay. Also hailing from Ashoka University is their stand-up comedy club, the Comic Relief. If the Comic Relief could speak, they would say, mental health is my middle name, which would definitely be a lie because their middle name is clearly comic. Their talent definitely lies more in comedy than in remembering their own name, which sounds pretty apt for a bunch of 20-year-old somethings. Guess you can't blame them. Their performers today include Ananthita Nath, who is famed for changing her major continuously. Really. Devanshi Iyer, a philosophy graduate who is famous for her TikTok videos as a meme format. And Adi Rao, one of the founding members of Ashoka's most successful party, Liberandu. So, welcome them with a virtual applause.
Adi, switch on your video, man.
Okay, we'll clap for each other.
Yeah, we'll clap.
Okay, so should we start the nanny?
Wait 1 second. Let me just.
Sure.
Yeah, cool. Oh, Devanshi and Adi Rao, can you guys be on unmute? Because
It'll be the laugh track. Yeah.
yes, please. Thank you. This is
Okay.
like Kapil Sharma show, but less. That wasn't a joke, guys. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Shall I start? Or should we wait for Adi to switch on his video?
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Who's starting?
Annie.
Me. And then move on to
Best of
TikTok.
luck.
star Devanshi. Yeah. Thank you, man. Okay. So, yeah. Hi. I'm Anantita, or if you're my professor who can't say 4 syllables, hi, I'm Annie. She's actually watching. I'm really sorry, Professor. Don't forget me. I love you. So, I am one of the directors of Comic Relief, which is the comedy club at Ashoka. The other 2 of them are Soumya and Deepthi. Hi, Soumya. Hi, Deepthi. Granted, I am the least funny director, but I'm the most confident. So you're stuck with me for today. Soumya, Deepthi, and I are all women, and we're all South Indian, which means that we don't think the pinnacle of humor is saying Bhencho and Bhojbiki at the end of every sentence. So I don't know about that. Jury's still out on Macha and Da, but we'll see. Yeah, Devanshi is also South Indian, and Adi, I don't know what he is, but moving on. Just getting all the facts straight, laying everything out on the table. I'm a communist. I say as if that means anything, but only on Tuesdays because that's when my Amazon delivery guy is on leave.
Yeah.
I'm just here to crack some jokes on Jeff Bezos, all right? Because he's rich and I'm not. So let's go. I wrote most of the set this weekend. So if you want free ethical 2-day delivery, I don't know, just call me. I hope that wink came out right. I'm not very good at winking, but yes. So Amazon is like your regular started in a garage struggle story, except replace garage with $300,000 of your parents' money. And the company was almost named Cadabra, but Jeff Bezos thought it sounded too much like cadaver. Or, the corpses of the Amazon workers who'd rather
அதுல
kill
போட்டா
themselves.
எல்லாருக்கும் மூஞ்சியும் வரும் உனக்கு பார்க்கணும்னா.
I'm so confused. What just happened? Okay, never mind. I'll finish the joke. It was about dead bodies. So, trigger warning. But yeah, the company was almost named Cadabra, but Jeff thought it sounded too much like cadaver. Or, the corpses of Amazon workers who'd rather kill themselves than work in the warehouses for another minute. Yeah, it's quite depressing. It's okay. We'll move on. Jeff Bezos graduated from Princeton, or the school billionaires who don't want to drop out of Harvard go to. And he did some form of engineering, which kind of explains why he has no imagination.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen him do anything with his money? Like, anything at all? The dude is so rich, but he still can't afford hair extensions. Oh, yeah. Free shipping and 2-day delivery time. With Prime, we got you covered, Jeff. Jeff Bezos' Pinterest board is just exclusively pictures of Lex Luthor. Makes sense. He couldn't bone him, so he just decided to be him. Honestly, most of the set would be redundant if he was just flamboyantly evil with his money, If I was that rich, which I'm not, I'd take a bunch of banknotes, dump them into the ocean, like he dumped his wife, take a nap for a day, and then submarine my way around Earth, picking up each one of those notes with a robot arm. Just saying. It's just a much better use than making people kill themselves. So Jeffrey here now wants to go to space instead of, picking up individual banknotes from the ocean in a submarine. Go figure. Turns out he wasn't satisfied with being the richest man on Earth, so he's now Miss Universing that shit. I'm almost convinced like Wall-E was made with Amazon in mind to redirect focus from another filthy rich mega corporation, which is Disney. So if you haven't watched Wall-E, the corporation that superseded governments and basically ruled the world and destroyed it eventually started out as a yogurt shop. And I don't know how to tell you this, but Jeff Bezos eats yogurt for breakfast. So you can make your own connection. So thankfully, I'm almost done, and then you can be on your way with our next Comic Sun reject, which is Devanshi.
Oh my god.
But before that, I did a little bit of digging, and I found out that you can buy actual guillotines online. Like, French Revolution, 1700s year, I don't remember any more guillotines. And Jeff Bezos' address is public. So if anyone is catching my drift here, I'm just putting it out there. And yeah, make your way for Devanshi. Comic Sun Season 3, Devanshi. Come on. Take it away.
I'll try. Okay, so guys, now that we've just heard a bunch of critique of capitalism from someone who goes to Ashoka University, let's go on.
You're welcome.
Okay, so yeah, Adi and Annie, please be my laugh track.
I will. Oh, definitely.
Okay. So, hey everyone, I'm Devanshi and I'm from India. Whoa, did you know that? Shocker, right? Didn't you expect that? Well, this is exactly how I started introducing myself after watching Chakte India. I mean, come on, you're getting people from all over India, okay, Shah Rukh Khan, you're getting people all over from India to audition for your team. And you ask them where they're from. What are they going to tell you? Are they going to tell you their state? Or are they going to tell you that they're from India? What did you fucking expect? It's like when you ask your mom, what's for lunch, mom? And she says, food. I mean, but the point is that I feel like these days, everyone really wants us to prove that we love India. So, in the theaters, I mean, if you guys remember what those are anymore, they play the national anthem, right? And there are some people who are like overly enthusiastic. Like they will stand in attention, they'll put their hand to their chest, they'll start crying at the end, they'll start I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but yeah, that's what they do, right? And trust me when I say that it is all for show. This one time I went to the theater and it was pretty much empty. There were like 6 people. Maybe we were watching Dabangg 2 or something, I don't know. And we all just look at each other when the national anthem starts to play. And then we all collectively decide that we will not stand up, and we just don't. And you know what happened? Nothing. No one was killed at the border that day. Just but anyway, that's not the point. Like sometimes you're in class, right? And the professor asks you a question and someone answers. And then after that person is done answering, there'll be this other smart motherfucker who'll get up and be like, actually, and then give you an unrelated Nietzsche quote just to tell you that he knows something. You know who those people are in the theaters? It's those fuckers who after the national anthem, they'll get up and they'll be like, Bharat Mata ki. It's like, and you're like, okay, I know who this is. You all know who this is. It's the Bhakt. So, and you have to answer him because you're like, this poor guy, he probably doesn't know Bharat Mata ki kya. He probably is actually asking a genuine question. It's the same guy who thinks that if you stop eating Hakka noodles, the soldiers at the border will get fucking saved. This is the same guy who says in one sentence, Aurat ki respect kar bhai chod. He can't answer his own question. So you have to be like, Bharat Mata ki jai, because you don't want to embarrass him. But just as we do have to consistently show our affection to our country, and I think we also have to do it I'm speaking about myself now, my religion, which is Hinduism. You have to prove that you're not a scam Hindu. So the other day I was on a walk, okay, and now you know what walks are. They're just like 6 feet of distance and everyone's wearing a mask and everything. But even then, there's this uncle 6 feet away from me. He removes his mask and then he burps. And I'm just like, first of all, that's not the point of a mask, but he burps. And then he looks around him and he can see like 5 people staring at him thinking, what the fuck, uncle? And he's like, Jai Shri Ram. Cute, dude. You think Ram Bhagwan keeping a tally of your burps and farts? Like, he literally does not care. People just, I think people really overestimate how much God cares about them. God is not Regina George with the burn book, keeping a score of how many people are eating during an eclipse. Who just spoke? And if someone is cutting their nails at night, imagine for 1 second that you're God. Okay, just imagine. You're this ever-present, all-knowing being. What would you do? Would you be like, हाँ भाई रमेश अंकल ने आज burp करके मेरा नाम नहीं लिया तो मैं आज थोड़ा जल्दी उठा दूंगा उसको? No. That's not how it works. You're a fucking bhakt, Ramesh. You're already going to go up earlier. You already have a lot of bad karma.
Oh no.
Anyway, I saw the physical manifestation of how much God doesn't give one fuck about you with my grandfather. He's like, guys, I don't know how to say this in millennial language. He's a huge Hindu stan. Okay, he stands Hinduism. He has like posters of all the members all over his room. Every morning he plays the songs in Sanskrit and he sings along to them. It's like my One Direction phase, but it's lasted his whole life and it makes no sense. This one time I went with him to a Hanuman temple, okay? And when we arrived to like the central attraction, which is basically the guy who hands the prasad, right? A monkey came and it tried to take the prasad from my grandfather. Now, I don't know why my grandfather resisted, because if God himself is coming and asking you for a prasad, then you should probably give it, right? But no, this fight broke out, my old grandfather being like, oh, and this monkey being like, I want the fucking prasad. And the monkey slapped my grandfather. This is a true story. The monkey fucking slapped my grandfather. And you know what? By this point, there's a crowd gathered around. This was before quarantine. Everyone's like questioning their faith. Do we want to worship a god? Because Hanuman is a monkey, right? Do we want to worship a god who would slap like this poor old man? Should we cancel Hanumanji? But maybe if Hanumanji has slapped this guy, then he's a plastic fan. I could tell that my grandfather was also thinking about this. He had to prove his bhakti. So he stood up, he gathered himself, he ate the prasad, and then in this meek voice, trying really hard to hide his insecurity, he looked around and said, Bharat Mata ki. Okay. That's all, guys. So yeah, that was all. But I'll hand you over to Adi Rao, who I'm sure is going to be fucking funny. Take it away, Adi.
Thank you, Devanshi, and thank you, Annie. So without further ado, I'll start myself. I'm Adi, and it is quite nice to be here. And recently, I've been just thinking about this virus and the stakeholders of this virus and who was benefited, who was not. And I think if there's anyone who has profited majorly from the lockdown, it is the hair on our bodies. They have been growing, they have been wilding, growing in places I didn't even know hair could grow. And see, all of this, it's been quite hard on the hair cutters. Hair cutters. Yeah, that's what I like to call them. I don't call them barbers. Because have you ever wondered why barbers are called barbers? Have you ever really thought about it? Listen, think about it, okay? It is fairly understood that if you add ER to at the end of some word, it means that the person does that thing, right? It's like she's a painter, she paints. He's a singer, he sings. COVID-19 is a fucker. It fucks everyone over. Right? Now you see what I'm on about? By the same logic, he is a barber, he barbs. Have you ever heard someone say, hey, I'll be right back, going to get my hair barbed by the barbing man at a barbing salon? It's ridiculous. But Yeah, now I see some of you going. I can't actually see you, but I know that you're thinking it. I see some of you thinking that, oh, but Adi, a barb means a deliberately hurtful remark, which I give it to you. Makes sense if you've ever been to or accompanied your mom to a beauty parlor. And yeah, they really don't fuck around there. I've only accompanied my mom once or twice. But from what I see in the movies, geez, secrets are revealed, alliances are formed, friendships are made, friendships are broken, contracts are signed, and even government acts are passed in these salons. And I feel left out sometimes, because my experiences don't quite match these. मुझे भी चाहिए life stories and insights about how to add spice to my relationship with my dog. But I instead, what I get is just deathly silence. Here's what happens when I go to a hair cutting salon. I'm like, hello, bhaiya, baal kaatne hain. He points me to the chair, and for the next hour, all that is heard are his passive aggressive grunts and my neck crunching under the weight of his hand.
Wow.
Sometimes, very rarely, in the beginning, he starts closely eyeballing my head. Okay, he starts staring at it. Then, if he's new, he'll utter the statement, not directly at me or anyone, just like into the air. He'll say, "Bal kam hai." And I'm like, that is, uh, what a good observation. What gave it away? And if I'm in the mood for it, I'll just start frantically touching my head and be like, fuck, घर से निकला था तब तो थे, रास्ते में एक सब्जी वाले ने चुरा लिए क्या? And the look on their faces is something I always cherish after that. And sometimes this also becomes like my way of breaking ice with them and building friendships. Because one thing I've learned is that a friendship of a hair cutter is very important because they give you some solid advice, okay? And I'd gotten so close to my regular guy that I got a lot of advice from him. And I'll give you an example. Recently, I wanted to get my car painted, and I told him, and so he was like, "Don't worry, I'll connect you to my brother. He's a carpenter." Thank you. That's been my time, and that's been the time of comic relief.
That was so
I
good.
hope you enjoyed.
Adi, don't lie. Did you write the whole set just for the last line?
Yeah,
I
I
kind of
swear.
did. Yes, yes.
Classic. Okay.
Swati says Lamau. Thank you, Swati.
So, who's in charge of this?
I have no
Yeah,
idea.
who do we hand it over to?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
That was so our next performer is Arya Jhaveri, also from Ashoka University. He's a part of our conversations with entrepreneurs, and he's the founder of Candid Expressions, an online portal that gives you a platform to exercise your creativity and share your ideas with a fraternity of like-minded people in a format of your choice. Apart from stories and art, he also has a penchant for debates and economics. Presenting to you, Arya Jhaveri.
Hey guys, I'm Arya, one of the founders of Candid Expressions, and I'm here to tell you what we do, why we do it, and how we make a difference. But first, let me tell you a bit about me. I'm a student at Ashoka University, and like every other college going kid, I'm confused about what major I want to pursue, or even what I want to do later in life. Every second day, I change my major, and every third day, I confidently say that I know what I want to do in life. Rinse and repeat for next 365 days. Now, when I was approached by letters to strangers for this event, I was actually quite overwhelmed and pleasantly surprised to say the least. I wondered what a founder of an initiative only 10 months old, being run by high school and university students, a bunch of confused teenagers like me, would have to share. Now, but I want to take this opportunity to share my story, a story of a group of teenagers who had an idea and are trying to make it real. And I can only hope that it gives you the inspiration to pursue your idea. Now, we all live in a very competitive world. We are surrounded by people who spend every waking moment trying to better themselves and have that edge to be successful. Now, this competition drives us to leave our comfort zones and makes us better, braver people. Now, to be very honest, this is something I've abided by for a very, very long time. I've always thought competition is good for me, and it kept me from becoming complacent. I remember being done with high school and having 3 months of complete free time on me. Any sane kid's dream, right? Now, the first week or so felt amazing. I mean, obviously, I just completed one of the toughest high school exams. Now, I honestly feel I deserve that feeling of being on cloud nine. But soon enough came that inescapable worry that I'll just end up, again, wasting my time. Now, like every other teenager, I interned, I read many books, and I just ended up watching Netflix, and I actually was just left with anxiety. Now, like every other vacation, in these 3 months, I went on a trip with my family. Now, there was some conversation happening amongst the adults, and I genuinely really wanted to participate. But for some reason, I was just too nervous to voice out my opinion. I don't know why. I thought my opinion didn't matter because maybe I'm not accomplished enough or I haven't really earned my ticket to the adult table. And maybe I should just listen. And that's when it actually struck me. My inability to voice myself gave me my idea. I decided that I wanted to offer a platform that allows people like me who think twice before voicing out their opinions to express without any judgment. A platform which is not only a showcase of talent, but more importantly, a place for others to grow. Not as competition, but as a community. A platform that helps you to freely express. A platform that's a catalog of your candid expressions. And so my brainchild was born. Now, obviously, when I was approached, I thought I'll simply explain what Candid is and what we do. But that could I could have just started by saying how we provide artists, writers, photographers, organizations with opportunities, blah blah blah. But instead, I actually thought I'll take this opportunity to talk about what we stand for, a purpose that has glued us impatient and on the move teenagers to this organization, even under all the pressures of assignments, internships, and whatnot. Now, Candid Expressions provides me the platform and chance to try something out without any external pressure, experiment to my heart's extent, do things not to prove something to the world, but only to myself, and feel like I'm working on something so insanely cool. Now, for everybody, it may range from something like how to code a website effectively to figure out how to get more followers. I'm still like figuring that out and increase outreach. For the first time, though, I felt like learning new things not because it would help me or my career, but because it just seemed undeniably fun to try out. Now, the kind of platform that Candid provides to its team is, and to me, is the same platform it's trying to provide to everybody out there. It's a platform for anyone who wants to try something new. Maybe it could be a piece of writing, or someone who would like to experiment with music, or showcase their latest potential prize winning images. Maybe it's something just as random as starting a business for the sake of it. It's for anyone and everyone who wants to express themselves without any judgment. And like every other teenager, if you get bored, we, a bunch of similarly bored teenagers, are there to encourage you, to give you the confidence to express and help you create something that you never thought you would be able to. Now, also, we'll be filling up your inboxes with our newsletters, our monthly themes, our editorial picks for the month. But that's only to keep you going and just to keep you inspiring. Now, we want you to create for no one but yourself. Now, I'm guessing if you all are still listening to me, that a common question, like you all must be thinking, how is Candid Expressions different from any other social media platform? What is so unique about us? And I'd like to answer that by stating firstly, it's a platform created by amateurs and bored teenagers. And it is for amateurs and bored teenagers. We don't we don't seek solely professionalism in our posts. We look for the best in new talent, in those just trying out the platform. Secondly, We are trying to create something which allows the contributor to look inwards. We want you to express your talents and see your yearning to improve, to learn, and to be appreciated. We are not professionals, and we are nowhere close to being professionals. But I don't think that's a weakness for me. I think it's a big strength. Now, we can make mistakes, and the best part is that we can learn from those mistakes and focus and improve ourselves. Now, Candid has really helped me come out of my comfort zone. Something like this, talking to 40 people, would be something I never thought I'd be able to do. It has helped me it has helped me try out many different things like interacting with celebrities, making and closing deals with many student run organizations. And best of all, it has helped me connect with so many more people. It has helped me strengthen my friendships and also make new ones. And I think that's what we need. We all need social interaction. And I think Candid is that platform for me to interact with many more people. It gives me the zest to keep going. And that's what I hope it is for everybody who participates in this community. I think in the recent years, more than building an entity, Candid Expressions has casually and candidly built a community that fosters creativity, encourages discussions, and gives everyone the ability to do something without any pressure. Now, it gives the youth of today, which is us, the ability to create something new, something different, and something to last for years to come. And I just like to show you all a video, which is something we've been trying out for quite some time. And I hope you'll like it. And can you see my screen? Thank you, guys. Also, I just honestly, I'd like to thank Letters to Strangers for giving me this opportunity. I honestly feel this opportunity to talk about what I'm working on is really great because I hope that it gives others also the strength to try out something on their own. And it's okay if it fails. Now, I don't know if this is going to succeed or not, but it's just something I tried out with my friends. I had an idea. I called up my friends and we were like, cool, let's try this out. And I hope it is the same. Everybody gets to experience a journey like this and experience something which is not for our career or for something we want to achieve, but just because it's something we really want to try out and without any pressure and without any judgment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arya. If you think you have an artistic inclination, we encourage you to check out Candid Expressions. Arya, we do have a few questions coming in from the audience. Could you please answer them?
Yeah, for sure. Right. So the question about what do you get to get your creative juices flowing? I think we come out with 3 themes every month. These themes are broad ended. It's not focused for a particular topic or for any particular kind of field, but it's more broad ended, and you can use those themes to express anything. It can be an article, music, poetry, photography, anything. So it is just to keep you all going, and we keep coming up with different kind of themes to just keep inspiring everybody. Right. So about the question about how do I deal with constant change, I think it's more about, I like to answer that by saying that it's not very difficult when you are pursuing something you like. Now, obviously, there are things you cannot always imagine, but it's more about your instincts. And because I'm doing with my friends, it always helps to keep bouncing back ideas with my friends on a continuous basis. Keep looking out for more organizations. Keep looking at how well established companies are doing this in order to grow. Right. So about how do I balance my education with this? I think a big time. I think it's all about um, how about you prioritize your things. So I honestly, what I usually do is I individualize the kind of work that a team is doing, so that there is less communication gap between us. So when I divide the work, it becomes easier. So it's where everyone has to do some amount of work, but it's not a lot, because obviously everybody has a priority towards their education and towards other things. But to keep going, I think individualizing work is something that has worked for Candid Expressions. Is Were those satisfactory answers, or do you all want me to follow up, or any other question that's there to answer?
Hi, those answers were really nice. Thank you. I
Thank
do
you.
have a question. So, which skill do you think is most important to start your own thing? Like to start your own company, business, small venture, anything?
Right. I honestly think there's no particular skill you need. Is because I honestly am not a good writer, photographer, or I don't have those skills, but I just thought I want to create a platform which helps me to express. So I think more than a skill, it's more of an idea and more of like passion towards your idea. If you really, really want to do it, you just have to go out there and try it out. Now, for Candid especially, I just had an idea and I called up my friend who's really good at coding, and we just started out by making the website first, buying the domain. So I think the biggest thing you need when you're doing something like this is just to start, is just to do something which gets your idea rolling, and then you will eventually figure out things when you keep pursuing it.
Yes, I 100% agree. I've been told that if you try to be perfect at things and you wait for the end product and only then launch it into the world, you'll never know what feedback you should have been receiving to better your thing. So even I would encourage everyone out here, if you have any idea, just go for it and you can develop and work on it on the way.
Great.
Thank you so much, Arya.
Again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. We're going to be taking a 3-minute break now till our next performance. So see y'all. If you have an artistic inclination, we encourage you to check out Candid Expressions. Speaking of artistic inclinations, our next performer is a poet who went to college in Jaipur and currently works at Qualcomm, Hyderabad. His love for reading began in literature classes at school, but he started writing much later, only to find an escape, and his poems grew into a reflection of the world. Ever since he dabbed in theatre during college, performance poetry has fascinated him. A few performances later, he has come to page poetry and its quietness it offers. The recurring themes in his poems are family, belonging, and queerness. Presenting to you Aditya Vikram Srivastav.
Okay, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so I have three poems to read out. They're very short poems, but I have written them very recently and I'd like to share them with you. So the first one is about queer desires. The second one is about belonging, how a marginalized group of people belong to the world, or do they not? And the third poem, the last one, is about my relationship with my parents and how it has transformed under my evolution as a person. So let's begin with the first one. So I wrote this as a response to this song called Lost on You. I don't know if you've heard of it, but so it's less of the song actually. It's more of just the three words Lost on You, and I tried to write around that. And it's about queer desires. So yeah, Lost on You. A ball dance with no stepping on the toes, lying down with our cheeks flattened against the cold floor. The taste of cheap wine on your lips, locked eyes and a downpour. Getting lost in different aisles of a bookstore. My arms falling out of bed, your bellowing snore. My chest, an aching valley under that heavy head of yours. A homophobe yelling, you bloody whores. Running for life until our feet are sore. Our goodbye hands stuck mid-air, a broken cassette playing a folklore. We were drowning when we first found each other. Remember? A few minutes when we held hands, our bodies bobbing above the surface of water. Break up, a silent unlocking of our breaking hands. My memory crumbles but refuses to die. Do you still miss looking at open skies? Our broken, still shimmer in the moonlight. The way we took a deep breath before drowning. Again, the fullness of that last whiff of air. Remember? 82 days can be centuries. We fell miles apart in the depth of the ocean, but there's still some air from the past left in our punctured lungs. Remember? So this was the first piece. It's called Lost on You, and I hope you liked it. Now I'd like to read the second one. So the second one is actually a recent one. I wrote it very recently, and it's called How to Die If You Do Not Exist. And it is a prose poem that I wrote. And I'm not really performing these poems, I'm just reading them. But I feel like if what they say reaches out to you, then maybe even reading is enough. So the second one is How to Die If You Do Not Exist. Temple bells ring. Pigeons perched on pointed domes scatter across the sky. I wait on the steps outside. A kid swings his legs on the parapet, staring at things I'm trying to hide. The paint on my nails has not dried. The sun looks orange in his eyes, a ripe fruit that bursts into rays before it dies. It's getting dark, but no one arrives. Hijre ho kya? The kid blurts from his throne overhead. The dirty vest slips off his frail shoulders. He laughs like a man, loud, condescending. My face wilts around the piece of silver on my nose. A half moon gleams against the dust. Rage, a venom courses through my veins. I open my mouth to speak. He throws a stone at my feet. I break like a stone idol hurled out of the temple. God until it touches the ground, and then a faggot in a dress. The blood looks dark red in his eyes, a shifting demon that comes out at night. A 16-year-old boy wakes up in my body, the dense, stubborn taste of grief still fresh in his mouth. Writing your last note is such a difficult task, especially the first draft. How to die if you do not exist? He crosses this written line and decides to live. Reincarnation, the word on his lips. Rarely he would get to dance. Those latched curtains drawn. Amma's Ferozi sari clumsily draped around his waist. Identity, a language he cannot translate. This boy of 16 and I, we weep together today. This kid with mirror eyes has already run away. Bells echo in the temple. People swarm out of gates and scatter across the street. For a few minutes, just before leaving, I watch my shadow become a woman under the yellow streetlight. So this was the second piece, and it was called How to Die If You Do Not Exist. And I think it's the story of a lot of queer persons living all around, scattered like lice all around the world, and still sort of erased and invisible to who, I don't know. So this was the second piece, and now the last piece, which is a very short one, but I wrote this I think 3 or 4 days back, and it's the first time I'm performing this. It's called Inheritance, and it is about the relationship of a son with his father. So yeah, inheritance. My aching chest is a stranger in my father's arms. It hasn't rained on his skin for ages. His taut back is a forest of scars, my hands to stray birds fluttering. A few pages, wounded by old poems, unlock from his spine, leaving behind the gibberish that he mutters in sleep. The last time we spoke, it was a slap. I was telling him I could not love like a man. The prints of his hand fading on my face, pink ribs of silt etched on the sky after sunset. As I turned into a night, they say I have my father's eyes, two dark caverns with spaces to hide. I take a long breath in the mirror and dive inside a lush graveyard, dreams pressed under stones, paper thin flowers. I was born here before I was born, but I borrowed nothing. Not his cackle, not the silhouette of him against the night coming home, not his tight shoulders, bundles of lost sleep, not even his coarse hands or heavy silences. So that was the third poem and was the last.
That was
So
really good. Thank you so much.
thank you so much.
We have a couple of questions that have come in. One
Yeah.
said, what does the writing process usually involve?
Okay, so generally, so when I began writing, it was more of like a spontaneous process. Like it's like how Elizabeth Gilbert describes it. It's like a running cat, and you catch it by its tail and put it down on paper, and it's done. But if you have to really professionally write or write as like a vocation, I think you have to be more disciplined and more patient with yourselves, because there are a lot of times when you sit down and you won't have thoughts just dropping in. So uh, so now my writing process is, it's still diffused in a way, but I like to sit down and think about things I want to write on, and then maybe give myself time to actually gather thoughts rather than trying to finish it fast. So I accumulate things in my mind, make structures, make words, and then maybe when I feel like there is something that is worth writing, I write. So I think, yeah, that's how it evolved.
And to build on your point where you said that you need a lot of discipline when you want to do this professionally, or even, when you want to do this, something that you do regularly. So is
Yeah.
there something in particular that helps you get out of the writer's block?
Okay, I generally just go for a walk, because whenever I do, I find so much to observe, and it really opens me up. Like you just walk past a simple road and you will watch so many different things, so many different people, and it's like a feast for your eyes. And yeah, and it helps in a way that it opens your mind up to different things. I think that sometimes we're just stuck on the same thought for too long, and then it sort of jams in our head. So I don't know if it helps others, but yeah, it did me. So yeah.
Thank you so much. It was great having you at our event, and we loved your poetry. And you could leave us your Instagram handle in case you post poetry over there, and we'll make people be sure to check it out.
Yeah, sure. Should I write it down or?
Yeah, you can put it in the chat box.
Okay, I'll just write it down. It's actually my name, so I have a very long name, and people often get confused with it. But it's Aditya Vikram Srivastava, and people, someone calls me Vikram, someone calls me Aditya, and all kinds of things. So you can
Thank you
choose
so
your
much.
own. But yeah, and thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I love performing.
So, as we've mentioned before, this event is a pay-as-you-like event, wherein all proceeds that you donate to us through our donation portals, which are up on Paytm and GPay, all funds would go to making mental health resources more accessible to the underprivileged. On that note, our next performer is someone who can share their experience of working with NGOs in great detail. He's also part of our conversations with young entrepreneurs, as Arya was. He is a student at the University of British Columbia pursuing a finance specialization. He is the founder of Community Code, a social enterprise working towards bridging the gap between NGOs and volunteers while giving them a platform to showcase their work in the form of stories. To paraphrase, CC is about lending a helping hand but also being a newsroom of stories. Today, he's here to share one of his stories about the genesis of CC. Presenting to you Soham Bhatnagar.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Hello, everyone tuning in on this event. It's so nice to be here. I hope you guys are having a great day. My name is Soham Bhatnagar, and I am the co-founder of Community Code. It's so nice to be here talking to all of you all and sharing our story. I hope there's something positive you could take away from all of this. I am a little surprised being here to talk because I don't think we've done too much, but I hope there's something you could take away. So our story goes 5 years back when I was your typical 12th standard commerce ISC student studying in Jamnabai. And there was this one day, one of my counselors came up and told me that, hey, Somam, you should have social work on your resume. It makes it more well-rounded and it gives you a better background. And it just got me thinking into the fact that that's great. I mean, it's nice to have it on your resume, but I always wondered, why was it that it just died on that piece of paper? Why was it that these stories never came out of that resume? And why was it that while we were exposed to so much news and noise and all of the clutter, there was just nothing nice. There was just nothing that just made you smile, inspired you to do something nice for someone, or something just gave you hope. So that's where the community code essence and our purpose was created, because when you think about it, each one of us is a story, and all of our stories and all of our baggage from our past and whatever we are today, our moral compass, our very conscious comes from our stories. And it is these stories that make us do maybe something nice for someone, to make sure that they don't go through the same things that we do. And it was this motivation to bring stories of social work ahead, to maybe just inspire maybe someone like you, someone like me, someone we know, to just do something nice for someone and complete their stories in the process. So that was the ethic, and that was the whole thinking behind Community Code. And I remember it was the 1st of April, 2016, when I had my last board exam. And me being a super excited young 17-year-old, I decided, okay, it's time to do something. And we had Community Code developing. So the 2nd of April, one day after my exams, is when I had my first NGO meeting straight away. I remember going to Goregaon from Powai with my co-founder Animesh, and we were super nervous, and we were talking to one of India's bigger NGOs, IDF India, and we spoke with Dr. Narayan Iyer for like 1 hour, and we were just trying to develop the concept while we're talking to him, everything on the fly, to just get him to partner with us. And after 1 hour of conversation, Dr. Narayan Iyer just looks at me and he's just like, "You make a good salesman." And I was just like, I'll take that as a compliment, because I knew that within 1 day of creation, we were an organization 1 day old with 2 people on the team and a half developed concept. And we already had our first paycheck, which was 3,500 rupees. So it was a great start. It was a tick mark for us. And we decided that there's no stopping from there. So in 2016, from April to June, our team went from 2 to 26 people, everyone young, everyone passionate, everyone driven, everyone believing in this concept of Community Code, of being the change you want to see. But there wasn't a single day, there wasn't one day where, even till today, in fact, that I didn't doubt the concept. Because what I could see was that for every one NGO that agreed to partner with us, we had at least 4 NGOs that just showed me the door, because they thought we were too young, or that we're not worth their time, or that we just won't leave a lasting impression. And that was fair to think about it. So while I had all of my friends enjoying a summer break after class 12 and before university, my typical day looked like having 2 meetings in the morning between 9 and 11 with 2 NGOs, 2 in the afternoon, maybe sneak in a lunch break if I had time. And straight after I'm done with 5 o'clock and my meetings, I come back home and I'm sitting with my team, and the days just never ended, because they just flew one into the other, strategizing what we're going to do tomorrow, what new can we do for NGOs. And that didn't stop for 3 months. We just went on, and it was a great feeling, because the team was growing, everyone was passionate about what we're doing, and there was just beautiful synergy that existed between these young students. And it was so nice to see leading such a team. And when we really go deep into this, we wanted to do something more than just to an organization that brings stories. So we decided we wanted to do an event, and that's where Herath was created. And we had Herath 2016 as our first event, where we had an inter-school event where we invited different schools to come and perform anything they like through any performing art, but about a social issue, because we wanted the wider youth to get involved in our mission. And to our surprise, Herath 2016 was a spectacle. We had judges like Javed Jafri, Neeraj Vora come to watch. We had more than 300 students come to attend, and we had students from 8 schools, from Podar to Jamnabai to Bombay Scottish, come and attend the event. And it was so overwhelming. It was touching to see that we had more than 300 people who had faith and who actually believed in our goal, in our passion. And that was great to see. And obviously, while I was out there getting partners and our team was super busy, I had Aisha, who was back and making sure that all the NGOs are well maintained, and we're able to have good relationships with them. We're getting articles out, and we're able to continue doing as much as we can for every partner. So it was all fun and games, and everything looked beautiful. But suddenly I realized, okay, wait a second, I'm leaving in August for university. And that was my first year. And me being a 17-year-old was a little off guard, because it felt like this weird long distance relationship that I'm getting into with Community Code, where I haven't really told it that I'm going, but I knew all this time that I was leaving. So it's kind of interesting to deal with that. But as you would expect, that didn't exactly work out as planned, because till December, it was going great. We were able to get more partners. We were able to grow. But come January, our team fell from 26 to 2. And that went to 3. And that's the best we did. And down to 3, I came back home in 2017. 3 people on my team, not much happening with the NGOs. And I personally had a terrible first year. I was very under average academically. I was just out of a relationship. I had problems with my friends, and just no one to go to, because I never spent time on a personal life while doing all this. And it was just too hard to motivate myself to just move up, because there's nothing really moving you to do something. But it was moments like this. It was moments like this that kept coming. But it was always that one promise that we made to the first NGO that we signed up on the first day of Community Code, where we knew that we've made a commitment and that we were not a one-time gig, and that our word meant something. And this was not going to be students who tried something and failed. It was that passion to actually bring these stories ahead and serve our purpose. So that's what drove me to just embrace this chaos, this complex headspace of having guilt of my privileged education not working out and me not being able to sustain something. But it was about getting over that guilt. It was about embracing this chaos in my mind. And it was just about my whole team, the few people that stuck around. We got back to the drawing board. We decided this is not how it's going to end. And we got back to business. We started from scratch. We got a team of 8 to 10 people, and everyone's suddenly super excited again. We had new momentum. We got a new sponsor. And for the next 2 months, we had sleepless nights, endless case writing. We had more partners coming in. We had more sponsors coming in, and just endless sponsor pitches, to be honest. And well, we decided this time to do something special, because we felt like we wanted to give the youth an opportunity to directly engage with our NGOs. So we created a case competition, which was one of the world's first NGO case competitions of this sort, where we got our partner NGOs to come and tell us their problems, and students directly gave them solutions for them. So we saw a win-win-win for everyone. And HERA 2017 was born this way, where on the first day we had the same thing as HERA 2016, and the next 2 days was the case competition. It was honestly a beautiful 3 days, though I'm pretty sure no one on the team slept more than 7 hours through those 3 or 4 days. We pulled it off somehow, though it would need like a team of 60 people. I was amazed and overwhelmed to see a team of 20 people pull such an event off, where we had more than 100 people for the case competition. It felt like a springboard into a future. It felt like this is what we needed. This is what's going to make us, because we were able to create tangible change, and we were able to bring this to our NGOs and our volunteers. So this felt special. And well, the story repeats itself, and we went through another year, and HERA 2018 happened, with everything continuing with more partners. But this time we had NGOs who were more excited about it, because they saw the merit in the concept. And that's how HERA 2018 shaped up, where we had more enthusiastic NGOs. We had a super enthusiastic organizing team, because we partnered with Manik G. Cooper School this time, and we got an organizing team of 60 people. And well, we used those 60 people to organize one of the world's biggest case competitions in terms of number of teams attending it, because we had more than 30 teams attend HERA 2018. And well, again, the response from the organizing team and from the students and the NGOs was just magical. And it's something that's so close to my heart and the whole team. And we all take a lot of pride in the work we do, because it's not just bringing stories, but also stimulating the change that we want to see. Because stories are a call to action, but we were trying to get actions from our side too. So that's where HERA 2018 And we decided, well, we're going to go into expansion now once I physically come back to the country. So I can't wait for this COVID situation to pass over, just like all of y'all, and come back with more services, a better business model, and so much more to do with all our NGOs in Mumbai. So I'm so excited to come back. But in 2018, it was in fact this time when I met three of the most wonderful people I know, from Shipra, Divya, and Chevy from the Plain Jar. And they are these young social workers dealing with complex issues like gender rights, mental health, abuse, LGBTQIA plus the community. And they have a program, which is their Child Abuse Awareness and Survivor Assistance Program, which trains the people who come to become pre-counselors and social workers. And just seeing such young people deal with such complex issues, especially in times like this pandemic, it's just inspiring. It's awe-driving, and it's just so heartwarming to see people do things like this. So you should check them out, definitely. And I'm so happy to have known them and to continue working with them. So, well, it's been 2 years since I had a 2018 closing speech, and I can't wait to come back, like I said. So just leave you with a closing note. I just want to say that, well, no age is too young, no idea is too naive, and no failure is the end. Because when you think about it, if you believe in something, you're passionate about something, and you're dedicated enough to a cause, trust me, one day when you give it time and you don't give up, it will all add up. And trust me, that feeling that one day will all be worth it. Thank you. If I have time, I'd love to take questions. I think that's a question. What would you tell someone who feels like they haven't found their passion? Well, no one's passion is ever complete, because when you think about it, at least for me, it was about knowing that my passion was to do something to change the way we see the social sector. But for each one, the passion differs, and well, you don't have to find it at your first shot, because you could be working in advertising and suddenly feel like, oh, you know what, you're actually more innovative behind the camera, and you might just go into direction, and from direction you might just feel like, you know what, I think I have the money and I can use this together, and you can just go into production, and before you know it, one thing leads to the other, and one day you reach your passion, and one day you know that, okay, this is the end goal and this is what I do best. So, well, there's no one answer to that, and you can honestly find your passion along the way. But your passion, at least for me, always comes from something you have always wanted to do and something that drives you. Because when you wake up the next day, you want to feel like, I want to keep going on with this, and that this is what I'm here for. Because with Community Code, like I said, there wasn't a single day where I even wondered how long I'm working or what my hours are. Because honestly, if you do what you're passionate about, it just feels like all fun and games until you get to success. I hope that answers the question. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. That was very insightful. Moving on, up next is a panel related to an extremely relevant subject in today's world, entitled Evolution of Gender and Sexuality. This panel aims to shed some light on gender and sexuality norms in the present day. This panel includes Professor Arunabha Sinha, author, translator, and professor of creative writing at Ashoka University. He has worked at Business Today, India Times, NDTV, and Web 18 in various capacities. He is largely responsible for engaging in difficult conversations around consent, power dynamics, and female characters in books, and for making one question their beliefs, especially when they're at the cost of someone else's autonomy or liberty. Professor Siddhartha Dubey, a professor of journalism at Ashoka University. He was previously a television journalist with over 2 decades of experience. He has worked with the startup team at Brookings India Institution Center as well. Anish Gawande, founder of Pink List India, India's first list of politicians who publicly supported LGBTQ+ rights. Starting before the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, the Pink List is nationally and internationally acclaimed for making inroads into conversations around the intersection of politics and queerness in India. He is also the director of the Dara Sikho Fellowship, which fosters global cultural dialogue around Jammu, Kashmir, and Ladakh. Doel Rakshit, writer, singer, performer, and activist, transgender by birth, vegan by choice. She works in a digital marketing agency as a copywriter. She lives in Mumbai and is a co-founder of Transistence, a digital platform for the amplification of gender voices. Total liberation and normalization of LGBTQIA+ lives are what she believes in. Christy Nag, who served as a spokesperson for TISS's queer collective during their time on campus for their masters. They have worked on the relationship between the Adivasi community and the Indian state, with articles published on First Post. Additionally, they have also explored the intersection of Adivasi, transgender, and child rights. This panel is moderated by Ifsha Zehra, an alumna of the Young India Fellowship. She has worked on the gender and conflict in Kashmir through Half Widows and in Delhi, that's the Rohingya refugees. She has directed 2 documentaries and done a video project, 2 of which are a feminist exploration in rural areas of Haryana, India, and recreation of resistance artwork of Kashmiri women. She has worked as a photographer with multiple firms and is interested in using visual media as a trope to bring forth marginalized narratives. Presenting to you the Evolution of Gender and Sexuality panel.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to this discussion on the evolution of gender and sexuality, brought to you by Letters to Strangers, Bombay chapter. First of all, I'd like to thank the team of L2S who organized this wonderful panel and the July series event. So just to give a brief idea of what L2S does, it aims at making mental health improvement easier for the underprivileged. My name is Ifsha Zehra, as I was introduced already, and I will be moderating this panel. I am a researcher and I work primarily on human rights, gender, and conflict in Kashmir. I will quickly be going over the format for this session. We have our wonderful panelists here who will all speak for about 10 to 12 minutes. I'll try to keep a tab of time so that we have about 10 to 15 minutes or 10 minutes in the end just to take questions from our audience. I'm straight up going to open the floor to the panelists, and we will be talking about the issues through the lens of politics, judiciary, and media. I want to invite Professor Dubey to speak about media and gender-related issues. Professor, if you can address how in mainstream press and how on a personal level, the representation of the queer community works. What is the language that is used by media personnel and within the newsrooms or within the mainstream media? How are spaces created in the first place? Are there any spaces for journalists who are from the queer community? So if you can, acquaint our audience with that.
Sure. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here. And hello, everybody. Fact of the matter is that most journalists in most countries, in mainstream press, in print, television, and online, and radio, know very little about the queer community, which encompasses transgender to gay. About 17% of American newsrooms have transgender people working in the editorial. On online newsrooms, it's better, it's about 20+%. So when it comes to building stories about the queer community or something to do with transgender communities, in America right now, thanks to recent legislation, it is front page news. It was a couple of years ago in India when the Indian government decriminalized homosexuality. Most reporters writing about this or talking about this know very little. So the message getting out to everyone at home is an uninformed message. And that's, well, it's sad, but it's also very dangerous because people aren't getting an educated view. Reporters know a lot about defense, they know a lot about politics. In India, they know a lot of, recently we know, or we think we know a lot about Ladakh, which is not the case. We know very little about Ladakh, but the journalists seem to know a lot about Ladakh. But we know very little about what's going on when it comes to legislation, when it comes to social habits, and when it comes to the issues the queer community faces in most countries in the world. India is interesting. It's soon to be the country with the world's largest population. So if you go by demographics alone, we should have the largest number of queer people, both transgender and gay, but we barely hear about them in mainstream press. And usually when we hear about them, it's something negative. And leaving that aside, it's even when you're talking about women in India, when it comes to rape, when it comes to something simple. If there's a road accident, the headline says female driver rams her car into pedestrians. But they'll never highlight male driver. They'll always highlight female driver. So it's basically, we are around the world an uninformed society when it comes to the queer community. I can talk forever, but I don't want to bore everyone to death. So up to you, Ifsha.
I think maybe you can join in the conversation on media. I think I'll now move on to Joel, because from mainstream media, we can talk about new media. And Joel, maybe you can touch upon the importance of digital spaces, because you yourself have created an online space where you amplify the voices of transgender people. So if you can talk about the emerging spaces and how online conversations are important to understand the discourse of gender and sexuality, and how one can take the conversation forward in these spaces.
This is to me or someone else?
So to Joel.
To Joel, great.
So the thing is, since I've been working in digital marketing and basically in the advertising industry, you always see that nowadays people are taking trans faces in their ads, okay? But we are still, to a great extent, seen as bodies, just bodies, like trans minds, LGBTQIA minds are something which people tend to neglect, okay? So there, I being an advertiser who writes copies, who actually creates campaigns, and not being the body of the ad, rather being the mind behind the ad, is something of a success, I would say, because I don't know any other copywriter or any other person who is working full-time into advertising in India, who is a transgender person, who is an out transgender person. So that actually made me like think about an organization or a platform where we can actually create we can create and amplify voices of marginalized gender identities and sexualities. So I got in touch with a few people, two of my chosen sisters who are into VFX and photography. We thought of a group called Transistence, and we started making videos during when the Transact protest was going on. Then we created some static communications on Instagram and Facebook. And then while doing that, because I won't talk about my organization much here, I would rather talk about the people I came in touch with just because of this tool of digital media. So I remember once I had shared the work of a Black trans woman from USA, okay? And I had asked her that before sharing, I had asked that could I share this live video on my personal platform? And she said, "You're a transgender person, you're always allowed to do that." And this sense of communication, which wouldn't have been possible if there was no digital media, if there was no online communications, is one thing that I was really fascinated by, because later I saw that person sharing my videos or sharing my work and the work of other Indian people, so that I am connected to people and um, digital content creators from Sri Lanka, from Bangladesh, from Kolkata, although I'm based in Mumbai. It's just because of the fact that online conversations have been like online platforms have started amplifying themselves, because of course the platforms which are run by LGBTQIA plus people who believe in intersectional politics are the ones who are actually amplifying it. These people, so there are certain challenges which I feel are there. One of the main challenges is the lack of fund to promote the videos or promote the content that they create or that we create on digital. Because I know, being in an advertising background, I always see that even the best of ads and the best of communications online often go unnoticed, or often doesn't go viral because of the lack of media intervention, because of the lack of promotion. So that is a challenge, I would say. But even then, I have seen a lot of queer people in India whom I have got connected online itself, that they have reached a decent number of followers without actually pouring in any money. For example, a few days back, I got in touch with a digital content creator from Kolkata, and yesterday I was only talking to her. I asked that you're getting a lot of reaches, like about 20,000 reaches per post. Are you promoting it? And she said, no, I don't have the money to promote. And that made me happy instantly, that yes, we don't have the capital with us, we don't have a lot of money to invest in it, but still with our ideas, with the investment of our ideas and of our knowledge of ourselves and of the community and of the problems which and the challenges which we face, that is also creating uh, a lot of dent on the online sphere. And I would name certain groups like Thane Queer Collective. They are doing excellent work online. Then there is an individual known as Queer Rave, whose Insta handle is known as Queer Rave. They are a non-binary person. They are also doing a great work. So I think it is very important that we get connected and get organized online, because the online network is wider. Okay, it is wider, it is inclusive. People can get connect, because we have to also think that our enemies, I would rather use that term, our enemies, the state, the society, they have gone far ahead of us. Okay, that I am talking to you people, they have an access to this. Okay, even if I think anything, they have an access to this, and I'm not kidding. So they have all the tools and all the agencies which can help them know what we are thinking. So rather than keeping it to our minds, rather than keeping it to personal conversations, we should also resist the way they are oppressing us. Now the oppression has much more gone into uh, what people call the ideological state apparatus. People are using ISA more than repressive state apparatus, because repressive state of apparatus has failed miserably. Stonewall had happened, where transgender people had thrown Molotov cocktails and all, and they know that even we can do some physical things, like we can also physically resist ourselves. There have been armies, there have been guerrillas working for black liberation and all. So that is something which is tried and tested for the state, and that is something which is direct. Okay, the state wants to get, the society wants to get their hands clean by oppressing us through ideas, because that is subtle, but that is more effective in my opinion. So when I talk about radical change, I actually mean the change in perspectives of people, the change in thought processes of people, the change in the language, the vocabulary which people are using. And unknowingly, indirectly, they are oppressing a lot of people. So that's why I feel that online agency and any kind of digital platform is a good way to oppose and to resist the oppression that we are facing.
Right. So coming back to Professor Dubey, maybe you would want to talk about it. We within these media spaces, we talk about the content, we talk about representation. Can you briefly talk about the form, how it has evolved? Because you have been in the industry for a long time. So if you can talk about the forms of spaces that have been that have evolved in the last 2 decades, 3 decades, and also if you can briefly talk about, borrowing from what Doyle just mentioned, the importance of these online spaces. So there are two kinds of spaces, a which are exclusively created to build a safe platform for these marginalized communities, and then there are platforms like Facebook and which are open to everybody, right? So how do we accommodate the conversation within these two distinct platforms?
So Diol and I represent two different generations, and I think that's key. I don't have. I'm not going to be rude and ask Diol's age, but I'm 52 years old. So the online conversation is something relatively recent, and it's outstanding because the World Wide Web, or conversations on the World Wide Web, are populated by people who are and driven, and in many cases owned by people who are under 30, 35. They're not owned by old, boring guys like me. So if you look at my generation, we are racist, we are largely communalist, and I'm generalizing here. We don't like gays. In fact, gays are the butt of many jokes. And most people, most of my friends, most people in newsrooms make jokes not in a malicious way. They're just jokes. And when I was a kid, it was politically correct. Now it ain't politically correct, and especially in the last 2 months, right? So this is changing, and this is changing for the better. So Diol said online conversations, online connections, and that is key because if the New York Times writes an article about the decriminalization of homosexual sex in India, it reaches everyone at the same time. If Vice News comes here and does a TV piece or documentary about gay artists or transgenders in India, or transgenders in the art space, it goes around the world several times. That couldn't have happened in my generation and generation after me. So the digital space is a tremendous space for education of people around the world about what's happening with a massive global issue like transgender rights. Netflix itself has outstanding documentaries. One of them I watched the other week called Disclosure. In that documentary, I learned a heck of a lot because I was starting from understanding very little because it's not an issue for my generation. I know very few transgenders. I know many gays because I have family in San Francisco. That's just because I have family in San Francisco. If I'd lived in India all my life in my little neighborhood with my little social circle, I wouldn't have. So it is really important, the growth of online news, an online community, on online spaces. I can't say if they're safe or not because I'd like to find out if they are safe. But for someone like me, who is trying to understand what's going on, trying to understand the terminology, it's a huge boon.
Right. Professor Sinha, maybe you can, join in the conversation here because, as you mentioned in the bio, that you want to engage and you try to engage with difficult conversations which concern consent, power dynamics, so to speak. And the words, our language, our writing is very closely related to how our realities are shaped, how it fashions and molds, how we understand the world, like the proximity between the word and the world. So maybe if you can talk about the role of words, writings, literature, and just language with respect to these marginal communities and just the idea of power, how it is built through these forms. Professor, your mic is off.
Yeah, I'm on now. Thank you for having me here. And I will apologize at the outset for the fact that this is, I'll call it a discipline because it is now a subject of structured learning and knowledge. Is something which, as Siddharth pointed out, is not one that my generation grew up engaging with in any form at all. Certainly not as something to engage with in a cerebral way. And therefore, I'm still learning. And I have probably learned far less than your generation, which has lived through a completely different way of looking at the world and at people and at gender. So much of my learning has actually come from my students. In fact, I dare say most of my learning has come from my students in the sense that all the ideas that I've then tried to take and apply back to my reading and my translation, most of them have come from the community of students whom I spend time with. So I'm very grateful to all of you for that. I may also not use the terminology correctly, so I am apologizing in advance for that as well. I'm going to talk in a very narrow sense, taking into account Bengali literature, which I have some degree of familiarity with because I translate quite intensively from this language. And also because in a sense it represents a certain kind of mindset, shall we say, that is perhaps very typical of the way Indian society has evolved throughout the length of the 20th century. Much of which may seem deep in the past to all of you. I just realized how the 20th century is history for many people. So it was almost a given at up to a long, till perhaps the 1980s or 1990s, that desire is located legitimately in the born male body and the born male mind, and that any display of desire in the female is necessarily an act of it's an act of enterprise. It's an act perhaps even of rebellion, and it is a manifestation that is to be admired in a certain context, but not overall. So the woman, I mean, I'm just starting with a very simple sort of binary gender kind of thing, because that is the way the world was looked at that point. There was very little sense of the fact that gender is neither a given nor that it exists beyond the two.
Professor, we lost you. Can you repeat what you said?
The so-called third gender was an object of derision and an object of very bad jokes, and also fear. There was fear about anybody who was not normative, a normative male or a normative female. And desire was certainly not meant to be located anywhere except within the male, who controlled the world, and therefore by virtue of this was supposed to control everything that comes with it. And the right to fulfill their desire was also considered a given for males, and it was only perhaps a matter of this male's culture and sophistication, that proved in what way he would fulfill it, to what length he would go, how much force he would apply, how much he cared for consent. Consent did not exist as a term. No one knew of consent. And the very clear extension of that fact is visible today in the fact that our courts, our legal system, and our administrators refuse to even accept the idea of marital rape. To them, any act of intercourse between a married couple necessarily is a given right, presumably of the males again. So this is where we came from. And from there now, over the past 10 or 15 years, thought and in social interactions and some literature has evolved to a point where there is an acceptance of the fact that it isn't quite as simple as that. It was an opportunity in the sense that because the entire literature was written by cishet people, it was an opportunity actually for a very different gender perspective to come out in literature through people who live that particular form or live all those particular forms, right? Unfortunately, that is not what happened. And I think I speak of Indian literatures, I mean, literatures of India, that most of what has been written in books and fiction, I'm not talking about non-fiction here, but fiction certainly, has been of people who have heteronormative thoughts, or who conform to heteronormative thinking, who are now trying to put themselves out by trying to represent and capture a different perspective. Maybe trying to go out to see, okay, what does the gay person think? What does the queer person think? What does the transgender think? How do they negotiate life? And can we capture some of this and put them into our writing? In a sense, you would say that this is a step forward in some ways, in the sense that at least they're breaking out of their conventional walls and trying to go into a different space. However, the obvious problematic thing here is that it's a bunch of other people who are claiming to speak for the people themselves, right? And I think what would have been far better is if these writers and the literary community had made spaces for queer writers, for gay writers, for all anyone who does not conform, to come out and speak and write and exchange and be heard by the larger community and not just amongst themselves. Obviously, the conversations that are taking place within the communities are crucial. There's no doubt about it. But it's really important that the rest of us who are out here get to hear directly from the people who matter, from the people who live these lives. And literature could be a great medium for this. And the people who are mediators, in translators, editors, publishers, booksellers, they could do a great job of then amplifying this literature so that it goes out to a larger number of readers, many of whom I dare say will initially be very, very uncomfortable when they read this. But it is important that, and one thing that happens is that when cishet people write outside their own normative boundaries, they immediately reduce it to a matter of sexuality. For them, it all becomes a question of sexual choice and manifestation of sexual desire, which is hardly all that there is to it. In fact, it is almost like writing about something only by looking at one layer, one visible layer of it and nothing more, and confusing that for everything. So they don't even make an attempt to understand what's going on, go into the roots, and to be a genuine ally. There is no attempt to be a genuine ally. Unfortunately, the writers in question, I think, are somewhere halfway between salving their conscience and actually trying to being opportunistic in seeing that there is great interest in out there. A lot of people might want to know what's going on, and maybe let's go out and write a book that will place us as the person who wrote this great gay novel or this great transgender novel. It's not a fundamentally honest approach. And I'm not saying that they're deliberately seeking fame, but that is very much at the back of their minds. So creating the right spaces by ensuring inclusion within the publishing community, for example, I don't think there are too many. Okay, so let's say that maybe Indian publishing, at least in the English language, has got to a point where you do have not representation. I'll go further and say that they do now hire people without taking sexual orientation into consideration. It is not a factor. So that's very good in a way. In a way, that's very good because it means that it is accepted as just one of the possibilities and not a question you would ask. It's like not caring where you live or what clothes you wear. On the other hand, if you have to think of inclusiveness, then you cannot quite pretend it's business as usual either. So there has to be a very focused attempt to ensure that there is inclusion of people who can then speak up for themselves and their community. So I think we have a long way to go there. We barely made a beginning, and I feel we are going too slow. We're going too slow because thinking and acting and I would say the revolutionary zeal is out there, and as far as literature is concerned, it's not quick enough. A lot more needs to be done in a far quicker time space.
Right. And you know, our world is and the movements around these marginal communities is cannot be devoid of the politics of it. So I'd really like Christy to join us here and maybe educate our audience on the role of judiciary in the queer movement. We've seen in the Indian landscape there are certain debates and discussions which are very important and timely, but especially maybe if you can talk about the trans bill. Right now we see in during the pandemic there it is being implemented, and it is the same time when trans people cannot come and collaborate and have discussions around it, and there have been reservations by trans activists who say that the act itself is exclusionary. So maybe Christy, if you can sort of talk about the role of judiciary and the important debates and discussions that have been happening in the last couple of years around that.
First, thank you for having me here. Before I get into the question that you asked me specifically, I just want to just draw attention to when we are talking of representation from queer community, we need to talk of caste as well. It is not devoid of caste. Who is getting the space and who is getting heard? Their caste location speaks volumes. So, and that is, I'm saying specifically to answer your question as well. When the trans bill got tabled and after, I guess, 2016, 17, 18, 19, when this entire trans bill ko leke jab movement bhi chal raha tha, then who were like, I was in my own capacities was involved in the movement since 2017. I was simultaneously involved in the Mumbai Pride का जो organizing group है Queer Azadi Mumbai, Queer Azadi March, I guess. Yeah. So, and I was shocked to see the sense of solidarity within queer spaces, and that was like shocking for me. Like people from within transgender community per se, me and some other trans women and trans star people and gender non-conforming people, we are saying ki in Mumbai Pride we need to talk of trans bill, we need to address this issue. And there was a whole campaign saying that no, we do not have the agency to talk on it, we should not be talking on it. Then what queer movement are we leading? Then what is this queer movement if we do not see the sense of solidarity within the movement? Here I'm not even talking of caste and indigeneity, I'm just talking of this entire spectrum itself. How come this 377 became a national queer movement and now we are talking of marriage rights, and this trans bill ko lekar ke, which has now become an act, that like people were talking, and specifically just transgender, intersex, gender queer community, gender non-conforming people were talking. Where was the queer movement? Where was the queer community per se? So I felt this loss of sense of community per se within this larger spectrum when I'm talking of it. And then again, issues of representation within movement, within judiciary. कितने ही Supreme Court lawyers या फिर आपके Supreme Court judges are there from queer community or from non-Savarna communities? Like how many people can you count? It is so when we're thinking when we're thinking of representation within queer community also, it is important to address or ask this question on caste as well. It is not devoid of caste. Caste plays huge role within queer community as well. And when we talk of trans bill, it was some Mahamandaleshwar के support से ये जो act बना है अभी. We cannot negate that. The entire caste nexus and this caste network has played huge role in passing in this act, in this trans bill becoming an act. We cannot negate that. That is there. And what I feel strongly is that critical engagement with the queer movement is kind of lacking. Like people are there, but then this critical engagement and of being critical of the movement itself is kind of lacking. The moment we say ki nahi, queer movement is not being inclusive, it is the question starts ki nahi tum like how can you say this? We are all there together. Every year in Mumbai Pride, Ambedkarite queer people, they come with the flag, and every year there is a heated discussion ki why was Ambedkarite flag in the queer move in the Pride March, without realizing without Ambedkar's work, your 377 movement, your trans bill movement, your queer movement is not possible. So this critical engagement is kind of completely lacking within this entire queer movement. Or when we talk of judiciary as well, अभी judiciary ऐसे करके कोई अलग wing है नहीं, अभी सभी चीज हमारे भाजपा सरकारी संभाल रही है, वो अलग कहानी है, तो वो तो अलग करके है ही नहीं. किस तरह के सीजे ये चीफ जस्टिस आ रहे हैं हम देख ही रहे हैं. So yeah, over to you, Mantab. If you have any questions, we can go.
I was going to ask, and if anybody else wants to answer the question, Christy, and if you would like to add to that, that the conversations we were just having about literature, about online spaces, digital spaces, media spaces, are still, in a way, if you look at it, these are niche communities, right? They are sort of the people who can read the certain language, who can understand what is being said and the conversations and debates that are being had in these respective spaces. How do you then move these conversations into the grassroots? And what are the movements that are happening at the grassroots level? Because Christy, I know that you are exploring the intersection of the Adivasi movement and the queer movement. So maybe if you can talk about that, and then other panelists can also join in if they have to add to that.
So when we talk of content per se, be it social media, be it mainstream news media, language becomes a crucial part. Like while I was growing up, I did not have words to understand myself. And the word that was thrown at me were thrown as galis per se. So there were no words to understand myself. And now if I go to an Adivasi hamlet and say ki LGBTQIA karke kuch hai, and then explain, I don't think it would make much sense. It is important to understand what are the prevalent terms like that is there within the community, what is there within the community's wisdom. How do they understand queerness per se? So just for example, when I talk of language in Mundari, there is no concept of gender. Everything is animate and inanimate. The same gender, like this, the same prefix is used for male, female, and people who do not identify as either male or female. So there's, and when in Santal community, sun is referred to as a male god and a female god in certain practices. So we need to understand and locate these knowledge that is there within the community and like bring them to like as in then relate it with the queer movement and see how that goes forward, instead of us throwing words and us giving them the language per se. It should be the other way around.
Right. Anish, as we're discussing politics and power, politics, how we understand it and how we've come to know it, you have specifically been working on creating the Pink List India, which has sort of created the first archive of politicians supporting the LGBTQIA plus rights. You are trying to explore the intersection of politics and queerness and asking questions, seeking accountability from the representatives, right? So maybe if you can elaborate on the work that you have been doing, and then why is it important for us to look at the political systems and creating the spaces there and identifying allies in these spaces?
Mm-hmm. So I want to build upon a little of what people before me have said. Very good to see so many familiar faces here, always lovely in times of social distancing. But I think the fundamental notion behind the work that we do at Pink List, and much of my work has also come from this idea that there is a significant need to reframe political discussions around queerness in India, right? For too long, either as a political/legal necessity or as a quick fix to ensure that we got these cases passed through courts, we framed homophobia and transphobia as colonial remnants only, which often makes it seem like before colonization, everything was hunky-dory, right? The British are responsible for everything, that homophobia and transphobia don't have a caste location, don't have a link to labor movements, don't have a link to other struggles that have happened in this country in the past. So the framing of queerness as an entirely anti-colonial process, which is the same framing that we saw in the 2009 High Court judgment, Delhi High Court judgment. It's the same framing we saw in 2013 and then again in 2018 with the arguments made in the Supreme Court, is a framing that is inherently anti-intersectional. It leaves out so many of these discussions because it makes it seem like there is no diversity within the queer community and that all the problems of the queer community ended with colonization. It's also a fantastic entryway into revivalist projects like Make India Great Again. So we've seen sort of Make India Great Again being like Make India Great Again before British rule. It doesn't take too long for that to go before Muslim rule, right? So this sort of revivalist movement presumes that there is a certain golden age that needs to be brought back, almost assuming that queer and trans bodies have not been under attack since time immemorial, right? What does reframing that mean? It means resituating the queer movement within the class movements that have been going on in the country. It means resituating the queer movement within sort of anti-caste struggles. It means situating the queer movement in Adivasi struggles and struggles against Islamophobia. And for me, I think it's very important because queerness allows an inlet into building solidarities. Because queer Dalits exist, queer Muslims exist, queer Adivasis exist, queer Kashmiris exist. So there's a common language of oppression that allows for the fundamental building block towards solidarity, right? Why I think that's important is that it gets reflected most evidently in politics. And it sort of achieves a greater impetus when you see it through the lens of electoral politics. Today, even now, the queer community goes with a begging bowl to the Supreme Court of India being like, please give us rights. There is no political standing of the queer community today, except for the trans community, which is well organized because of the Gharana system and because of a certain sort of history of struggle that has involved ranges of fights, right from Namdev Hasal's Morcha for trans people and sex workers in Bombay as part of the Dalit Panthers movement in 1980s, before ABWA and before the sort of HIV/AIDS activism and other sort of allyships of the trans community with other social movements. But otherwise, the queer community has been left to fend for itself. And how long are you going to depend upon a Supreme Court that took forever to get even 377 thrown out of the window, right? And Pink List started off exactly in 2018 with that idea that at a time when the Supreme Court hadn't dealt with 377, it was 5 years since the 2013 judgment, and it was looking increasingly unlikely that the courts would do anything. There was a need to understand that you can't be begging for rights anymore. And the Supreme Court, in all of its wisdom, called the queer community a minuscule minority, generating a lot of outrage, but it's something I fundamentally agree with. We are a minuscule minority. And the only way for a minuscule minority to advocate for its rights and to fight for its rights is to advocate and ally with other movements that happen across the country, by building solidarities across the country, by ensuring that a collective voice is formed that has the power to make its demands heard. Because even today, the framing of any queer issue is in the form of charity. The Trans Act, if you see any of the speeches that were made in the Lok Sabha, are all almost as if the Trans Act is Parliament's gift to the trans community who are so oppressed and so pitiful in this condition that needs saving. If you see any of the conversations around these ridiculous inclusions into the paramilitary forces or any of these other state institutions that have happened, they're tone deaf because they assume that all that trans people want to do is fight in the army without acknowledging the demands for affirmative action and protection against discrimination that have been made. If you see all the discussions that I had about this glorious past where Khajuraho has these wonderful paintings of queerness, and queerness is represented in mythology. There isn't any discussion on the fact that all these characters end up being in the sort of pathos genre. None of these characters end happily ever after. None of these characters are characters that you want to be, right? And these are, again, on the fringes. So reframing this, positioning it within an electoral politics discourse is the only way to ensure that in the future there will be any queer representation in any form of electoral politics. It's also the only way to ensure that any struggle for rights goes beyond a begging bowl and moves towards a demand for accountability, a demand for rights, an affirmation of existence, rather than this sort of approach, which to me right now has been led by incredibly privileged folks, including those like me, right? Upper caste, upper class gay men specifically, who are happy with marriage, who are happy with inheritance, who are happy with fitting into a system that doesn't acknowledge the fact that, just like Christy said, this is an LGBTQIA plus community. So we either drop the pretense and say that we're not a community and there are certain groups fighting for their individual rights, or we say that we are a community and deal with the complexity of the fact that as a community, we cannot afford to ignore the marginalizations within marginalizations. And therefore, it becomes hypocritical to not stand up for other rights. And I want to end with a very simple example, one that I had, and this is what also spurred it. I came back to Bombay to campaign for the 2019 Lok Sabha elections. That's my sort of day job. I was traveling across Maharashtra. It was a fantastic thing. I was wearing tight white pants, colorful socks, brown Oxfords, and kurtas like these, and sitting on the stage with like 40 politicians white on white. And the people I met who were queer affirmative were not your sort of urban bred, sophisticated politicians, although there are some of them who are queer affirmative because South Delhi parties demand a certain level of queer affirmation to be invited. But it was those like Raju Shetty, a farmers leader from Hatak Nangal, who said that I'm a farmers' rights leader. If I don't support queer rights, I'm hypocritical. And I wish that we bring some of that thinking into the queer movement today and into queer politics today, saying that if I'm fighting for queer rights, to not fight for the rights of Kashmiris is hypocritical. That the communications blackout in Kashmir is a queer rights issue, not just directly because it denies safe spaces, but also within the larger framework of sort of the right to privacy and other rights that we fought for as queer rights in the past. So I think it's important to create a broad-based coalition that asserts identity and that acknowledges diversity within the queer movement. And for me, Pinkless India came about as a way to explain that, because it's electoral math. You're never going to win unless you create these coalitions.
For sure. I was going to add to that. Recently, there were some conversations around, especially after the abrogation of Article 370, that this is a win for the queer people in the valley. It is a win for the women in the valley. And a tool which is sort of borrowed from Israeli settler colonialism. Pinkwashing is the term that is used, and how it is employed to propagate their own agenda and narrative in the name of queer people. And recently I saw that there was a provision that was made that trans people can now be part of, I don't know which military establishment, but and people were celebrating that without, thinking about that, how inherently these structures need to be questioned, and these institutions inherently are the ones that are propagating these power differences in our society, right? So I think I would just sort of stop here and open the floor to questions. We have about 12 minutes. Our audience has been commenting constantly, and I think they might have something to say or add to. You can address any of the speakers that you like, or you can just write your questions, and we'll take it from there.
Ifsha, just to add to what you just mentioned and what Anish mentioned, when we are talking of issues of justice, when we are talking of struggles with respect to justice, there is a historicity to it. It is not devoid of historicity. It has to have that engagement. It cannot just out. It is not just out in the blue. ऐसे ही बस लटका हुआ नहीं है कहीं भी. It has a historic. Like when we talk of caste, when we talk of Kashmir, when we talk of Adivasi communities, there is a historicity to the struggles of justice of these various communities and groups, and similarly for queer community. And when we and this is something which Powell, she was there in the Stonewall movement back then. She said that we are everywhere, meaning we are in every permutation of human identity, and all these struggles is queer movement, and like queer movement has the capacity of building on it, and it has to have an historical we need to engage with it with the historical context. It is not devoid of that.
Right. I think we have a really great question, and if you can just, give your final comments, like, line or two. What do you think, just a second, I'm going to read it out. What do you think is the future of LGBTQIA plus awareness and acceptance in India, especially among the older generation? So maybe people from the older generation can join in and answer the question.
Should I go first or the other professor? Let's see, to be honest, and I speak for myself, I can't speak for my generation or anyone else but myself. Our thoughts are formed, generally speaking. If people don't like gays, people don't like gays. If I don't like the concept of transgender, then I will continue not liking it till the day I die. But what I think is more important is the information out there, that I know that I can find out that transgender people, gay people, queer people, lesbian people are just like me. The only thing which is different is that their sexual preferences are different. So that's what I'm looking at, is more accurate information, for a more informed population. In India, generally speaking, we are one of the most ignorant populations on the planet, a bit like Americans, the other big democracy, really ignorant bunch of human beings. And I'm not going to say why, because it's pretty apparent why we are, but if we have access to more enlightened information about the queer community, then that's better. And I believe that is coming.
Right. Professor Sinha, if you would like to add to that. I think.
Yeah, we look to your generation to teach us. And I think what would really work is if more of you came and spoke to more of us. That is what has changed everything for me. And I believe our generation, and indeed people who are even older, would benefit greatly if in ones or twos or threes or fours, as the case might be, we met you and we saw where you're coming from, and we realized that your thinking is so clear and that your hearts are in the right place as well. And that you're a natural progression of our thoughts, that it is not as though you are trying to go against anybody just for the sake of going against a generation, but that you have understood and realized what diversity means, and that diversity is normal, that we should not look upon diversity as a large, undifferentiated normal, and then some people who are different. We should actually be able to understand that if you really apply diversity properly, then we'll find that each of us stands somewhere on a spectrum. And that, I think, is very important for us to learn, that we are not some kind of homogeneous, homogeneously similar to one another. And if we realize that each of us is somewhere on a spectrum on 5 or 6 different axes, then none of this would become strange anymore. And that perhaps I think is what I hope will happen.
Right. Doel, Christy, and Anish, if you can, there's a question that what are some of the books, podcasts you can recommend for better understanding? Maybe you can, suggest our audience here something that they should look at, or something they can read, or in general, if you have any alternative resources in mind. Anish, you want to go first?
Sure. So I think to begin with, I would really recommend following a few interesting people. For me, that's Disha Pinky Sheikh in Maharashtra. Disha is a trans woman. She's an Ambedkarite feminist and a poet, and she's the first trans spokesperson of a political party in Maharashtra for the Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi. she has some incredible insights. She shared some beautiful literature on how in the 1930s, Ambedkar had actually picked up the fight for queer rights by defending a newspaper editor in court who had dared to publish a letter to an editor from a gay man and had replied saying that there's nothing wrong with your feelings. At a time when nobody was willing to take this up, the case was eventually lost because of laws around public decency and morality that still exist in Bombay. I would also say that Maya Sharma's book is one of those beautiful works that really allows you to think of queerness before colonization in ways that doesn't necessarily link to Hindu mythology. It frames queerness in indigenous narratives, and she puts some really beautiful work out there. I'm going to type these out here as well.
Right. Doyle, do you want to go next?
Yeah, there are some on Instagram there are many people working and they have pages. One such I would say, because the understanding of non-binary is very even within the people, even in the trans community, even in the LGBTQIA community, I see a lack of understanding of non-binary identities, and that it is also a huge umbrella and how it intersects with transgender identities. I think there is a group you can follow. It's called, it's not a group, it's a page on Insta. It's called nonbinary.in. I am seeing some posts which are really, really informative, because I think we are still at the stage of understanding certain things before before going ahead with that, because not understanding these identities might lead to the oppression of marginalized within the marginalized, as Anish pointed out. And so I think nonbinary.in is one of the important things. There is another called Trans Army. Okay, I would suggest you can have a look at that. Yeah, these are the two things I would like to suggest, because these talk about, and also you can see the work of Thane Queer Collective. They are doing excellent work, and also talking about intersections of caste and gender, and also Adivasi rights, non-binary identity. So please have a look at these pages if you can.
Thank you, Doyle. Do you have any final comments and any resources that you would want our audience to look at?
I'll just type it out in the chat section if that works.
Yeah, that works.
Anyhow, I'll just Malaroli is one online magazine that people should follow, as in it is by and for trans and non-binary people. So that is one. And there are a couple of pages, Instagram pages, which I'll just type it out in the chat section.
Right. Do you think we have time for one more question, Arushi?
Yeah, you can ask a couple of questions and end around 5:10.
All right. Okay, so there was a question about saffronization of the queer movement. I think Anish sort of touched upon it in the comments section in the chat box. But if any of you would like to add to it?
Yeah, I would like to say certain things about this. First of all, one thing I want to make clear, that when the right-wingers and the saffron crowd say that we are going against colonialization and we are setting up a society which was there before the colonial times, and therefore we are queer inclusive. Look at Khajuraho, look at these caves, Ajanta Ellora. This is something I want to make these people aware who are not aware of it, that even the whole agenda of bringing back the golden age of India is itself a colonial idea. Okay, when people like Max Muller, when people like William Jones got paid by the British governments to actually translate the Indian texts, translate the Sanskrit texts, they put their politics of translation, they put their colonial politics into it. And the people who are talking about pre-colonial era, their sources of understanding is that, their basis of understanding are those texts. So the whole idea of revivalism, which has its stem in Orientalism, it has its roots in colonial politics. So there is nothing to think that this is something a way of decolonization. This is rather neo-colonial. So the whole saffronization of the queer politics is a neo-colonial thing, and decolonizing it properly means actually subtracting the saffron color from the rainbow. So I think the real way to actually decolonize it is by challenging challenging them, by saying ki what you are saying, you are also colonized. What you are saying, you're actually giving a more subtle version of colonialism which is more powerful. So I think that is something we need to talk about and read more about.
Right. And there was one question, if you know, that can be our last question. What do you guys think about people who have started using same-sex depiction in Hindu mythology to support the queer movement? Doesn't it leave out queer people from different backgrounds? Do you think it should be stopped? Does anybody want to address it? Professor Sinha, probably if you can.
Yeah, I'm very chary of reinterpreting. Okay, am I? Yeah, I'm chary of. I'm chary of reinterpreting known episodes to cast them in a queer light, because that somehow it's an attempt to legitimize queerness by elevating it to the level of super people. So, or even the gods are queer, so therefore it's okay to be queer. But that's not the point at all, right? The point is that it is inherently human to be queer. And it is not even a question of whether it is okay or not. It's there. And, just realize that and leave it there. So, yes, I agree with you there that I'm not in favor of this reinterpretation at all, of trying to just you don't have to legitimize it. There is nothing here, nothing illegitimate to begin with. So why does it need to be legitimized? It doesn't work. I don't think so.
Just to add to it, as in when we are talking of mythology, there's an aspect of performance involved, as in it is just there, and if it is just like, if it is not happening around you, it is fine. If it is not part of the day-to-day life, it is fine, it is there. So it does not actually percolate down in the day-to-day lives per se. And second thing is, again, when we talk of mythology, is it devoid of caste? How much this caste element plays in Hindu mythology, that is also that we need to look at.
Right. So I think that can be our last question. Thank you so much, everyone. That was a very interesting conversation and discussion that we had. I learned a lot from all of you, and I think there is a lot to think about and to take from this conversation. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you L2S for organizing this wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. This discussion was really insightful. I first can say that I have learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone over here has felt the same. Thank you so much. What better way to reflect upon everything we just heard than with some soothing music? Our next performer has always known music as her refuge. She began learning keyboard at the age of 9 and piano at the age of 12. She has performed at various venues across Bombay, including St. Andrews. She is currently a student at KM Conservatory, pursuing her passion and love for music. We are sure that you'll be swaying to her tunes and mesmerized by her voice. Presenting to you Yashvi Kedia.
Hi. Hi everybody, I'm Yashvi, and I'm going to be singing a couple of songs for you, and just some really heartwarming songs that I've been lately listening to. So the first one is Kho Gaye Hum Kahan. रूह से बहती हुई तूने ये इशारे दे, कुछ तेरे राज मेरे राज आवारे से खो गए हम कहाँ, रंगों सा ये जहां, खो गए हम कहाँ, रंगों सा ये जहां, तेरे मेरे रास्ते हैं, जादुई इमारतें हैं, मैं भी हूँ तू भी है यहाँ, खोई सोई सड़कों पे सितारों के कंधों पे हम नाचते उड़ते हैं यहाँ, खो गए हम कहाँ, रंगों सा ये जहां, खो गए हम कहाँ, रंगों सा ये जहां। खो गए हम कहाँ, रंगों सा ये जहां, खो गए हम कहाँ, रंगों सा ये जहां. So the next song is called Kafirana, and yeah. काफिराना सा है, इश्क है या क्या है, ऐसे तुम मिले हो, ऐसे तुम मिले हो, जैसे मिल रही हो इधर से हवा, काफिराना सा है, इश्क है या क्या है, ला 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 ला, गोदी में पहाड़ियों की उजली दोपहरी गुजारना, हाय हाय तेरे साथ में अच्छा लगे, शर्मीली अखियों से तेरा मेरी नजरें उतारना, हाय हाय हर बात पे अच्छा लगे, ढलती हुई शाम ने बताया है कि दूर मंजिल में रात है, मुझको तसल्ली है ये कि होने तलक रात हम दोनों साथ हैं, बेसुआदियों में जैसे मिल रहा हो कोई जायका, काफिराना सा है, इश्क है या क्या है, संग चल रहे हैं, संग चल रहे हैं, धूप के किनारे छाँव की तरह, काफिराना सा है, इश्क है या क्या है। The next song is called मेरे लिए तुम काफी हो.